Welcome for this session about making cities future-proof. There was and is a lot of talk going on about cities these days, about the challenges and the solutions that cities are facing. Without any further ado, let me introduce to you the first speaker, Marije Hulshof. Welcome.
Unlocking the future of the cities. Urbanization is inevitable and it comes at a price. And what that price will be, that is up to us. By now you are probably familiar with all the distressing numbers. Our world's urban population will grow by 65 million people a year, or 179,000 every day between now and 2025. And today over half the world lives in cities, but by 2050 over 70% of the world population will be urban dwellers, and mega cities of more than 10 million inhabitants or more will be common. And because of this rapid urbanizations, cities are really pushing beyond their limits and are merging into new and massive regions, and that introduces new challenges to all of us. Challenges we haven't dealt with before. If you take, for example, the Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo region, that region now already has a population of 43 million. And just imagine all these people. They eat, they work and play, they go to school, they need hospitals, they commute, and they produce waste. They need clean air, they need water, safe transport, and they need water not just to drink, but also for hygiene, food, industrial production. And they expect and deserve to be safe from the threat of flooding, from pollution, from drought. And do we really comprehend what that implies? And do we really believe that we can overcome these challenges? And how can we do that? The shifting demographic not only requires city to be dynamic and flexible, it requires us to be dynamic and flexible, you and me. And it's not just that, we better speed up, because a great city today may not be a great city tomorrow. And we all need to ask ourselves, what can we do to solve this immense question, and what is it that we need to do in order to make a sustainable contribution? I work for an international engineering consulting firm, and our core business is to develop and implement sustainable technical solutions and innovations in close partnerships with our clients. And that's what we do. We do it good all day, every day across the globe. But the more we learn about the challenges of the urban environment, the more we, engineers, also realized that we, nor our clients, nor our partners can solve this on our own. And without being disrespectful, neither can you. Just think about those 10 million people living in one big city again for a second, and think about issues like food security, food safety, water safety, distribution, traffic jams, and increasing waste flows. And the interconnected nature of these issues simply means that it is not possible to solve one problem without impacting on another one. For example, improvement in air pollution that will benefit residents' health, but are unlikely to be achieved without changes in the areas of transport, of industry, energy, and true sustainable solutions require action across many functions and sectors. And yes, that interconnectedness is part of the challenge as well. Real solutions combine state-of-the-art techniques, good governance, stakeholder, community involvement, and a solid business case. And we are only able to offer real solutions when we approach the urban challenge in that integrated manner. But where do we start? How do we prepare cities for our future needs? From our perspective as Dutch engineering consultancy firm, we distinguish a few interconnected themes where we are convinced we and our Dutch colleagues, also our competitors, can add value, and that we are specifically equipped to team up with clients and partners and add value to the city. And I will go into a few of those themes, provide some practical examples, and especially highlight the partnerships and the launching customers that we need in order to tackle the urban challenge. First theme I want to talk about is sustainable urban mobility. Basic principle is of course quite straightforward. More people create more pressure on transport networks, more congestion, more pollution. So that is why we are working on traffic management systems, on stations, rail solutions, smart infrastructure, etc. And these are all links in a chain that ultimately lead to an integrated and sustainable transport system. Recently, we tested 12 highly automated self-driving cars of various brands on a test track here in the Netherlands. And we did this together with an insurance broker and risk advisor, Aon, Business Lease Netherlands, and provide training. Being Dutch, we can of course offer solutions related to cycling as well. There are more bicycles than people in our country. And we also have the biggest bicycle parking system in the world. 27% of all our traffic movements are done on a bike. If all European citizens would cycle as much as cycling nations like the Netherlands, the carbon emission would be reduced by 25%. So in the Netherlands, cycling is truly integrated in public transport and especially the train. In Europe, half of the car trips are less than 6 kilometers. So here's a huge potential for cycling, and that's exactly what we Dutch engineers are exporting globally again. We do this working with partners. So for example, in London, we team up with Sustrans, which is a UK-based charity, on the delivery of the London Quiet Ways project, and this project aims at providing safe and convenient routes for cyclists through the city. All partners bring in their knowledge and innovations and to make sure that London stays as vibrant as it is today. Another example, in May last year, we presented the Beijing Bicycle Strategy and Policy together with Ecofis and the China Academy of Transportation Sciences. This project was initiated and funded by the Asian Development Bank and aimed at reviving cycling in Beijing municipality, battling congestion and pollution. And of course, another theme that we are famous for is water. Battling with water, living with water for centuries. There's one example here that I want to highlight, and that is the water vision of Schiphol 2030. Schiphol is focusing on its long-term approach to sustainable water management, and that vision 2030, the water vision 2030, includes many solutions and innovations that are relevant to airports, but also to cities internationally or nationally. It encompasses elements like reclaiming nutrients from wastewater, harvesting of rainwater, green infrastructure, and the good thing is that Schiphol has developed its plans in close alignment with the long-term development plans of the local, regional, national, and transnational authorities surrounding Schiphol, and that alignment, of course, is vital. The third theme, circularity. Within 1 month since the world agreed to combat climate change in Paris, the Netherlands Circular Hotspot was launched by Circle Economy, by the Institute for Sustainable Innovation and Development, by SARE, and by the Data Development Group. And this is a campaign that is aimed at positioning the Netherlands internationally as a circular hotspot, sharing best practices and learnings with companies and governments across the world. Of course, we are also one of its proud ambassadors, and you can join. Feel free, you can look at Facebook and Twitter for hashtag circular hotspots. Striving for a circular economy is no longer just a noble cause, it is a necessity. We need to close the loops, as we say. Sounds perhaps a bit vague. Let me give an example. Ones I want to put forward is the Take Back Chemicals initiative, which is an applied business model where chemical supplier is paid for the function of a substance, say a sulfuric acid or something else, rather than the quantity of it. And this approach aligns the interests of both supplier and user and reduces the amount of the substance that is needed as well. And it encourages development and operation of new production processes, increased efficiency in chemical use, and of course a reduction of waste. So, I briefly touched upon water, circularity, sustainable mobility. A last theme I want to touch upon is, of course, the community, the people in the city, the urban dwellers. They can and should be involved in finding solutions for our cities. One of the examples that I find inspiring can be found in the city of Nijmegen, who involved their communities in sharing their experience and insights. People are actively contributing to the ambition to have the city of Nijmegen completely energy neutral by 2025. And in order to achieve this goal, Power to Nijmegen was established in 2012. And by now it's a program in which companies, research, educational institutions, governments and citizens work together on ideas and very important projects. First results are there, initiatives on wind energy parks, on solar panels, on roof of buildings. And please check out Power to Nijmegen if you feel inspired. All the themes I mentioned are complex, they are multi-actor driven, and they require interaction and cooperation from government, financial institutions and the private sector, and they need to be fully aligned with the needs of the society they are designed to serve. And again, we cannot do it on our own. We need to create new roles for governments in a society where participation and cooperation are the standard, and we need new alliances to further shape and manage the urban challenges, and we all have a very important role in establishing that new constellation. There's one last and final example that I want to mention in that respect, and that's the Dutch Urban Approach platform that aims to explore, to show, but also to export internationally the Dutch approach to urban challenges. Dutch Urban Approach platform focuses on sharing knowledge, using the concept of the triple helix. So we bring together knowledge institutes, industries, government knowledge and insights. And in this case, that's the Ministry of Infrastructure and Environment, Oerhaan, Eindhoven University of Technology, but I heard that there's now already almost 6 universities involved. Also, Arcadis joins us on this platform, and other colleagues, several smaller urban designers, and the initiative is still open for participants. So I really encourage you to join this initiatives. Okay, I'm coming at the end of my presentation. We named a few themes explaining our position as a business, as a technical company, to society. Let's say our proposition and our call for cooperation. I hope this inspires you to reflect on yours. Again, we nor our clients and partners can take this challenge on our own, and only if we work together towards a better future, we can achieve what we want. So let's not linger, the time is now. Thank you for your attention.
Our next speaker is Maarten Hajer. Maarten, welcome on stage. You're going to talk about the next economy and the power of imaginaries, and also about cities as living labs and experimental city.
The theme of my talk is indeed the next economy and the future of the city. And I think we're all sort of uncertain how much is going to change in the next years and decades. Is it possible to have an economy like ours without CO2 emissions? Is it possible to do it in the same nation-based system of governance? Is it possible to reinvent democracy so that all these firms that want to become part of the solution are also under democratic authority? Tremendous challenges. And the wonderful thing of this day and age is that we are in a spirit of experimentation. There is a new confidence, at least amongst those who are here, to start to talk about the future in terms of living labs and experimental cities. So let's explore a few of the opportunities that that gives and a few of the threats as well. So I like the idea that we now have the future back on the agenda, for that is definitely also a change. It was only a few years ago that the government in the Netherlands did not want to talk that much about the future. It was all running the business and making sure you didn't overshoot in terms of your budgets. But now definitely, and look at us here in a fantastic location with such a large audience, we want to talk about the future. That's a great achievement. And we have a language for that. We talk about living labs, about innovation hubs, city deals, green deals, special zones of experimentation. So we are actually changing our society and inventing the way we do it as we go along the road. Now that is actually a tricky process, because what we want to do is a lot and we better be quick. So we do experiment and also with the future. We do invent government anew. Did you know, for instance, that the European Network of Living Labs has more than 250 members? And these are governments that thought we must register. Well, I bet that most governments that think about themselves in terms of a living lab don't even bother to register. Now, living labs obviously look under the hood and think what you see might be very different in one living lab compared to the next. But as a whole, there's a tremendous challenge, of course, to compare notes. Now, the problem with the future that we are dealing with is, of course, that we cannot really know it. I mean, it's impossible to know the future. So my question as an academic, how do we then go about trying to solve the problems of the future? Because we have to invest billions of dollars, billions of euros. Now, there is a trick, actually, and the trick is that we invent a future as an imaginary. And that is the first topic that I want to address. I think that you can, if you go along and listen to what I say, you can reconstruct for yourself that we use imaginaries, fictions about the future, to structure our expectations. And that is fine, that's absolutely good. But the one thing that I want you to appreciate as a policy scholar or a political scientist is that we have uneven access to imaginaries. Some people have much more power to say what the imagined future is than others. And again, I think, as a society, you want to have a debate about the future you really want. So here is, I think, the dominant imaginary. The dominant imaginary of this day and age, without doubt, is that of the smart city. It's the idea that although our problems are tremendous, we can solve them if we apply ICT technology to them. I love ICT. My bag is full of Apple products. There's a very clever camera in there. I'm a gadget man, absolutely. But still, I think we want to just put on the brake a bit and keep a sovereign position to these imagined futures. Because it is so persuasive, it's pervasive as well. You see it everywhere. You see it in the classic journals, and you see how there is a sort of a string of examples that always come back that speak to the logic of that future smart city. Now, the one worry is that we know that you don't want to repeat the societal system that brought you into problems when you try to solve the problems of our age, right? So if our modernist view on science, our modernist view on progress, is the one that helped us into trouble, that helped us not appreciate that fossil was a problem, that helped us not appreciate that modernist buildings are hard to live in, then you must now break out of that modernist logic. Now, here's a picture of Songdo, and some of the speakers will know much more about Songdo probably than I do, but I think that Songdo, as a city that is a model city that was built in one go, is vulnerable for learning. A learning city is one that incrementally builds itself up and constantly learns on the way. So if people pretend to know what the future is like and this is the product you need, and learning stops, I think we have far less likelihood of achieving a wonderful future for us all together. So smart cities is, I think, an imaginary, and it is a very powerful one, because imaginaries are the way in which economic futures shape up. Jens Beckert will soon publish a book in June called Imagined Futures, and it's an intricate study of how imaginaries function in the economic order. And he argues that the dynamic of capitalism as an economic system depends on the confidence in fictional expectations. So it's not because we cannot know the future. You can't say that it's a reality coming true. You just can't know. There is a fictional element in that. So take Mario Draghi, who helped us out of the Greek crisis just more than a year ago. What did he say? He said, I will do whatever is necessary. Believe me, it will be enough. Now, surely we all read that and thought, well, how can he say that? Does he really have the power? He doesn't know what the problem really is like, although he's obviously most knowledgeable with the bank behind him. But it is an example of a fictional expectation that worked because the market corrected itself and the euro survived. So we have to be prepared to realize that the domain of facts and the domain of fictions are very close, indeed overlap. That's a very different approach. You probably, as government, need new advisors. You need advisors that understand how fictions work, not only people that know how numbers work. So here's my proposition. Are we perhaps a bit mesmerized? Are we mesmerized by a language that comes to us through all these journals and that constantly says that the future is there for big data, urban science, 3D printing, smart technology, domotica, platform capitalism? These are massive developments, but perhaps we should also think about them in terms of, is there a way in which there is an element of wishful thinking compared to the future foretelling? And that's the topic of the book that in a previous job I wrote together with Tom Das and the people from PBL. You can only get it electronically because it was sold out. Now, so here is the whole idea about smart cities. I mean, Amsterdam is not New Delhi. But nevertheless, both cities want to be a smart city. Can that be the same smart city? No, it cannot. So we cannot, if we are modernists, we would suggest that the idea is to roll out smart cities, right? Because we have the optimal solution and it's good for everybody. Well, obviously, in New Delhi, these problems are different, and a smart city therefore has to mean something very different. And the same is true in China and Europe. So we need to have much more of a debate about what we really need. I was taken by the comment by Martin Schulz, the chairman of the European Parliament, who said, and reminded us, I must say, the internet has lost its innocence a long time ago. I mean, it is not as if the internet only brings good. It's going to take things away. It's going to be about inequality just as much as it is about progress. So some of us want us to believe that their vision of the future is not a mere wish, but a foretelling. I think that is very nicely put by him. The idea that there is, of course, a push of an imaginary that is much more a wish than that it is a prediction. Now, The Economist, also a journal, starts to get worried and argued, hey, where is the government in all of this? So there is a book, you can probably know it, The Circle by David Eggers, who sort of speculates truly in the domain of the imaginary about a future where Google, Apple, and Facebook come together in a big corporation. And then, of course, the portray of that book is that government is driven out by a technological corporation. Now, read these books, take science fiction seriously, I would say, because we don't want to end up in optimal societal solutions. The question of the moderator was to the point. Do we want to live in a living lab? I think we want to discuss what we want, right? So democracy always first. Having said that, it's obvious we need to change. And we need to change dramatically because the old techniques of master planning won't help us out any longer. They are too stale, they are too stiff, they are too slow. So this image of a man leading from the hierarchy up, even in a lab coat, well, this is a lab tradition in the modernist planning. That is not our future. We must now invest in horizontal learning, in ways in which cities can learn from themselves and from each other. That is a new future, I think, that we want to explore. So it's not investing in the fixed institutions, it's investing in the platform, so that Groningen can learn from what Zwolle found out to its dismay, that New Delhi knows what the solution in Johannesburg has brought them, but not with the idea that you can mimic, it can only inspire. Situations are always contextual, and you need to much better understand how these futures work. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I think this is the fantastic age for all of us who like collaboration. This is the day and age where those who like to think across disciplines have a field day. And most of all, I think this is the day and age for the designers. The designers that can bring these different people together in terms of thinking through solutions. And that is what the Biennale is going to show. These pictures of people trying to make the world a better place. Here, this is iShack development in Cape Town, where academics, together with the community and some financial support, have allowed a true bottom-up smart city where people can actually lease a solar panel and improve on their livelihoods. More health, less cost, and lower CO2 emissions. That's a totally different proposition, of course, of a smart city than the systemic one. This is one that learns all the time. Academics said, we want to be part of the solution. We just want to be at the ground and not only in the peer-reviewed literature. We see, as I say, new agents of change. New people in new coalitions that help us bring these solutions to the fore. But we must support them. We must help them do that. And actually, the previous speaker alluded to that. The business community is open to new sort of alliances, but how do we link those sort of alliances to a democratic system and to a knowledge system? And I'm skeptical whether that is about a smart science, about replication, about sampling, rigorous scientific knowledge, upscaling, rolling out. That language is too modernist for me. I think it is much more about the unique, the assemblage, the connection locally, where people are also accepting that you learn all the time. By now it should be obvious that I think that smart has a bias. And in some cases, low-tech might actually be a much better solution than high-tech. Here, PBL, again, at the Biennale and my previous employer. They calculated that using residual heat and geothermal is a very cost-effective solution to make the built environment CO2 neutral. So that is low-tech. Are we overlooking low-tech solutions because we all think about hard-techs and everybody's a gadget man like myself? Or here in Nairobi, Kenya, a telephone provider giving people the opportunity to bank, to have health insurances, and again to have PV systems. It is smart, but it is bottom-up. It's an entirely different proposition, and it is with a GSM cell phone. It's the simplest phone there is. And it improves the livelihood of people at the bottom. So smart city or intelligent communities, like the Canadian colleagues of mine prefer. Do we need technological or social innovation? I think, again, it's overweight to the technological. So what do? I think we want to invest in these sort of horizontal learning, intercity learning, you may say, if you like trains, and create new positive urban imaginaries, alternative imaginaries than the imaginaries that are often very corporate about a smart city. And then use this as a triangle. It's not controversial, I think, but always as somebody in government or in policy or a citizen, think, does it help create meaningful employment? Does it help to create a clean city? And does it help to create socially inclusive cities? These are 3 UN-accepted SDG goals. But we must always think, does this application of smart tech help us achieve precisely that? Now here is the reverse order of the world. Morocco is beating us in Europe in a fantastic way in terms of renewables, with one plant that caters for 1/3 of the electricity demand. This is the Chinese in Addis Ababa, who built a tram station that helps the city not suffocate and perhaps helps Ethiopia become a leapfrog country that just doesn't go through industrial modernization, but goes to ecological modernization in one go. These are eye-openers, and I must say, as an advertising man, they are all at the Biennale. And Toronto, where the pressure of the market is such that we go to 92-story Frank Gehry buildings and still the planner try to make that into a socially inclusive city. These are the challenges of our time. And finally, think about the learning environment and think about innovation also, not in terms of the university where the bright minds are. I think the future of learning is in the city. So here, arrows say to go. Perhaps the next meeting for students is next to the Albert Heijn, because learning becomes actually also part of that new alliance formation that I see happening with new agents of change, an open university, and a reinvention of democracy. I would encourage you, come and see it for yourself at the Biennale in Rotterdam from next Saturday onwards. Thank you for your attention.
Our last speaker is Mr. Sokwoo Rhee, working in the US. Do you see different stages or distinct differences in the development of smart cities in the US compared to Europe?
A lot of the European Smart City Initiative has been top-down approach, starting from cities and with a budget and everything. US does not have that legacy history. So a lot of times what US is doing is a bottom-up approach, developers and communities trying to fill a gap in the cities. And I'm glad to see that actually a lot of European cities are doing the same thing these days, which I'm going to talk about a little bit. So we are now in the same phase, although history has been a little different. First, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here and to be able to speak in front of all the great minds, especially interested in smart cities and Internet of Things. As soon as I started crossing the river with a ferry, I was so impressed by the scene and view and Amsterdam itself. So my brainwave got completely stimulated. I'm really high and up right now. All right, so I'm going to talk about smart cities and Internet of Things. I work as an associate director of a cyber-physical systems program at National Institute of Standards and Technology. For those who do not know NIST, it is part of U.S. Department of Commerce. We do a lot of standards and we do a lot of measurement science. Essentially, we are a science lab or engineering laboratory. So you may wonder, why does U.S. Science Lab do anything to do with smart cities and IoT? Before answering that question, I'd like to first explain what IoT is. How many of you heard about a term called Internet of Things? Raise your hands. Okay, a lot. Great. How many of you heard about a term called cyber physical systems? Very few. Most of you guys, I know you guys already. So you are cheating. So IoT, if you ask this question, what is IoT, to 100 different people, you're going to get probably 99 different answers. All right? But this is really a nutshell. It's very simple. At the bottom, there's a hardware layer. It's sensors, actuators, radios, and chips. Things that you can touch. All right? These glasses, things like this. That's hardware. In some cases, it's big, so there's like cars, airplanes. Those can be all those hardware things on the bottom. On top of that, there's the connectivity. There's a communication that connects these different things. All right, Wi-Fi and cell networks and Bluetooth. All these things connect these things by communication. Now, a lot of people think the bottom layers are IoT. That's only partially correct. On top of these, there are two more very important layers. On top of the communication, there's data analytics layer. This is where you take this communication, you take the data through this communication and extract useful information. A lot of people say data is a new currency. Is it valuable? Well, not exactly. Data itself has no value. Essentially, it's ones and zeros. It's the numbers. It doesn't really mean much until the time you extract useful information out of it. All right? So that's what this third layer does. And on top of that, there's the most important layer called the service layer. This is where decision is made. Out of the information extracted, what are you going to do with it? If you display all these tons of data on the screen, great, nice graphs, great visualization. But if you do not act on it, really there's really not much value about it. All right? What that means is pretty simple. If you have a building automation, building energy consumption data, it's great, nice to see it. But you got to really act, do something to reduce the overall energy usage, to reduce the energy consumption. That's really what ACT is. So that's what these 4 layers. The reason this is important is because it also corresponds to smart city structure. So at the bottom 2 layers are typically called infrastructure. Top 2 layers are called applications. That's how the smart city Internet of Things are related. This is just one slide. White House announced a smart city initiative in September 2015. Okay, and really the target is to use federal resources to meet the local needs, like cities and communities. There was an investment of about $160 million in the federal research. As a part of that, NIST and NSF, National Science Foundation, are selected as 2 main drivers from the federal government agency to implement this smart city initiative. Why did White House even do this? Why are we even talking about smart city? All right? What is a smart city? Well, again, if you ask this question to 100 people, you're going to get 99 different answers. Pretty simply speaking, a smart city is essentially improving quality of life by using technologies such as IoT or cyber-physical systems. Okay, that's great. So we all want that to happen. Here's a problem. There are so many cities out there, and so many cities are doing developments and installation, deployment of these solutions in a very isolated way. Smart city market is extremely fragmented. Put it this way. Virtually every city, every large city that I've been has some kind of traffic congestion problem. Not all of them, but most of them. Virtually every one of them is developing and deploying some solutions to reduce traffic congestion. And guess what? They all develop themselves one by one. If you go to city A, and they are developing a solution for traffic congestion, and they invest tons of money to do it. If you go to city B, they do exactly the same thing, and they don't even talk to each other. This is a classic problem. This is the biggest problem that prevents economies of scale. With this picture, neither cities nor the companies and universities are going to enjoy any of the economies of scale because nobody can resell the products again and again. All right? Cities are not happy because they cannot leverage each other's investments. All right? So as a result, today's smart city community deployments are isolated, do not enjoy the economy of scale. There are a lot of programs, there are a lot of different ways to address this, but NIST created this program called the Global City Teams Challenge. The goal is pretty simple. We want to establish and demonstrate 3 important things. Replicable. Again, we are not interested in a solution that only works in one city. We want a solution that works in 90, 70, 80% of the cities. Okay? Scalable solution. We want, of course, we have to start from some lab demonstration, but we are interested more about the solutions that can be deployed in a broader and larger scale. Sustainability, which is probably the most important out of the 3. A lot of the smart city solutions are developed through some kind of funding. And when funding runs out after a couple of years, they don't know what to do with it. And frankly, I've seen many examples that actually they request more funding to remove the solutions deployed already because they cannot maintain it. There's no operational benefit to maintain it. So what a waste of time and resources, all right? So why is this happening? Because when we look at solutions, when we develop solutions, we don't really think beyond the deployment. We have to think of beyond deployment. We have to think about how we're going to sustain it. Is there a business model behind it to create revenue to sustain it? Or does it create enough provable enough public benefits that cities are happy to invest their taxpayers' dollars into it? If neither of these 2 works with the solution, frankly, you got to rethink about it before you even start deploying it. So how do we do it? We want to, instead of each city working with multiple cities at the same time, each city working with each company one and one at the same time, we want to bring in multiple cities on the left side from all the world. And we want to bring in companies, universities, nonprofits, government agencies, whoever can provide the technology on the right side. We want to coalesce them around certain topics, air pollution, traffic management, building automation, whatever, the cities feel that they have shared common issues. By definition, the solutions that come out of this process will be replicable because they was based on, that came out from the collaboration of different cities, all right? So currently, this is the second round that we are running this GCTC, Global City Teams Challenge. Over 120 cities have participated so far. These are the partial lists. Amsterdam was one of the very much highlighted city in Global City Teams Challenge, and I appreciate that. Again, this is not just for the large cities. There are large cities like New York City, Washington, D.C., and Chicago, and so on. But there are smaller cities like Winooski, Vermont. Not many of you probably heard of the city. It's 7,000 people. It's a very small city. But they also do smart city projects. In the United States, there are about 19,000 cities. If each city has to invest tens of millions of dollars to get their traffic congestion addressed, how many cities do you think that out of the 19,000 cities will be able to afford to even start those projects? That is not going to happen. So you need this replicable, scalable, and sustainable solutions to really go beyond just a handful of cities who can afford to make these things happen. So every year in June, we bring all these teams and we bring teams together, and we have something called the Expo. It's an opportunity for the teams to be able to show off what they've accomplished, what they've got. Last year, we did it in the building museum, in National Building Museum, Washington, D.C. We had over 60 teams in partnership with more than 50 cities, and more than 200 companies and universities participated. We are very fortunate that the King and Queen of the Netherlands actually participated. And in addition to that, we had Tony Fox, U.S. Secretary of Transportation, and NIST and White House. Most importantly, this is a benefit to the teams. We have more than 50 media outlets from all over the world, from obviously Netherlands, and from Germany, from Korea, from US, from UK. So this is the benefit for the teams to be able to show off. And out of this process, we want the teams to be able to replicate their success. At the event, also, there was another initiative was announced by the royal couple and the mayors of 7 or 8 different cities, Global Smart City and Community Coalition, GSC3. This is a great example of this multi-city global collaboration. The programs like this works with the Global City Teams Challenge program I run, so that we want multiple cities to work together and share the solutions, not just the presentations, not just the talks. We want those solutions to be jointly deployed and measured. So this year, we will have an expo again. It will be on June 13th and 14th in Austin, Texas. For the last few years, we've been having this event only in Washington, D.C., but this year we are moving to Austin, Texas. And I'm expecting that a lot of the folks from Netherlands are going to also participate, and also Europe from Asia. Right now, we have about 75 teams already registered. I expect this number is going to be as high as 100 by the time we have the expo. About 60% of them are from the US, but about 40% of them are from outside of the US. We have 5 teams from South Korea. We have 6 teams from Nigeria in Africa. We have many teams from Europe as well. So go to gctcexpo.org and you're going to see more details. These are the examples of projects that was presented last year. As you can see, flexible public lighting of Amsterdam right here. And also another project of smart mobility from Eindhoven. Transform project from another project from Amsterdam, and a water project, which is a joint project between WRI and Netherlands. These are the projects from the US. Again, we had more than 60 projects last year. These are just a few examples. Storm Sense project, which is a collaboration between 7 different cities in Virginia to predict the flooding. The reason this is important is this: when flooding comes, the flooding does not stop at the borderline of the cities. all right? So it's not like a storm going to say, oh, this is now different city, so I'm going to stop here because the system is different. It doesn't work that way. Storm goes over all the way, and flooding goes all the way. So that's why it's important for the regions to work together. Link NYC is in New York City. The reason this is kind of interesting is this is an example that develops a solution that provide a free service to the citizens, but at the same time, they actually generate revenue through advertisement. It's actually a Wi-Fi hotspot. In New York City, there are about 7,000 payphone booths that really nobody uses these days because everybody brings their smartphones, except a few cases. So what they did was they said, we're going to replace the whole payphone booth with a huge Wi-Fi hotspot that provides a free Wi-Fi service to the citizens. It's going to have air quality sensor and noise sensor that can detect the vital signs of the city 24 hours. And then it's going to generate revenue. They're expecting about $700 million for next 10 years through this advertisement. So it's self-sustainable, no taxpayers' dollars. They basically generate their own revenue. We cannot do it ourselves because this is a huge initiative, so I need partners. So there are a lot of partners here. Notably, you can see that Netherlands is listed as one of the 4 main central governments that we are working with. There are corporations and nonprofits and US government agencies like National Science Foundation, Department of Transportation, and State Department, and all that. Right now, we have about 300 companies and organizations participating. More than 60 cities in this round are participating. If you want to have any more questions, if you want to know more about it, here's my email. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have a question for you before you sit down. From your example, it seems to me that in the US, the collaboration in cities with the government and private entities is even more close. Do you recognize that? Can you explain what is the key success factor in that?
No, I wouldn't really say that because they don't collaborate very well, put it that way. It's my job to put them together and make them work. So the point is this. It is very interesting that this problem of the fragmentation and isolation is widely known. Either government, cities, and companies, universities, they all know about it. They are just waiting for something to happen or somebody to take the lead and just bring it up to the surface and work on it. And that's what I figured. It's not like I did anything excellent or anything. I just said, well, this seems to be a problem. Let's work on it. And then suddenly these folks who kind of like realized the same problem joined the show. So I wouldn't call it as particularly good collaboration environment. It's more like once they see the problem, they really think it is worth attacking. That's when something happens like this.
Okay, thank you. Can I have an applause for all 3 speakers?
You want